All right, folks, good morning. It's March 22nd. We are in Elverson, Pennsylvania, and we're going to be polishing concrete floor in this little, it's actually going to be a mobile office for this gentleman here. So we're just trying to get set up here now. Of course, we have a tight little road. Jeff's behind me here. He's got to get the generator in place. We're going to try to jam the equipment in here. This is why I always try to explain to everybody, you know, be prepared for what we have coming in here. We got this big trailer. We have Jeff back here with a generator, and we have a fairly little staging area here. So it's a little tight, but we're going to get this all set up. I'll get this on video. I'm going to show what we're doing. We're going to go from there. Okay, so here's today's project. This is not a very big floor at all. It's, I don't even know what this is, 300 square foot or so, 400 square feet. But this is going to be an outdoor office area. So we're going to fill this joint. We're going to polish this floor. We're going to do a 9-step grind. We're going to take this to 1500 grit. And that is about it. So we'll start getting set up, and I'll take video along the way. All right, so just got ready to cut this joint open and realize my diamond wheel is shot here. We use this is a tiger tooth blade, diamond blade. This is, I believe, 7 inch tiger tooth blade. This is what they call an upcut saw. So as it cuts, it throws the dust up into the vacuum system, so it's a dustless cut. And we run this down the joints just to clean the dirt out of the joints. So these have to go in a certain rotation, so we put it on the right way. Put the nut back in here. Tighten this thing up. That was a quick change, we're good to go. So that's what we got to do to clean this joint out. All right, so we're all set up in here now. We have our saw hooked up to our vacuum. We have our grinder in here. We were discussing diamonds. So right now we have a 40 grit soft bond diamond. This concrete's really hard, so we're gonna end up putting on a 40 grit super soft compound diamond, which is what you need to cut into this concrete. You can just tell by looking at it, this is extremely hard. So, actually, I'm just going to go over diamond compounds really quick. And here's our saw. I'm going to plunge cut, I don't know, about an inch and a quarter. That blade's not all the way down, just to clean this out before we fill the joint. We're going to go over diamonds now. So now, I know I've mentioned diamonds before, but when you're dealing with the diamonds on these floors, you have to have every grit diamond. We normally start at 40 grit, and we turn the boxes upside down when they're mounted on the machine, but 40 grit to 150. These are all the metal bond diamonds that you have to have in each compound. So we don't have any black up here, but they start with black is the hardest, I'm sorry, orange is the hardest compound, and it works its way up through the colors, and yellow is the softest compound. You need a soft compound diamond for hard concrete. So those are our diamonds. You can see each of those boxes is $400 or $500. They're very expensive. And then, of course, we have to have extras of everything. So these are all of our extra diamonds that we have to have in order to do this. So you see all these boxes that we have up here. So we're prepared for any job we may run into. As well as we have our shot blaster on here. Here's our burnisher, here's our spare grinder, a small shot blaster, and we have a lot of equipment to make this happen. And of course our generator, just getting ready to turn that on now. Now I kind of got off on a tangent. Okay, so getting back to this. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna cut this joint open just to clean the walls of the joint. We're gonna fill that with the polyurea joint filler. Then we're going to get set up to grind the whole floor. All right, so what I wanted to show you here, I know that wasn't much to really see, but I did that twice, and these blades are narrower than the saw cut. So I actually drag the blade down the left edge and then the right edge. So I do it twice to get that joint clear. So now the joint's clear, we're gonna fill this joint, and then we're gonna get ready to polish. So a lot of people in the past have asked me when we're filling these joints what the equipment is, that electric gun that I use to do it. So I'll show you what the gun is and the model number. It's a DeWalt DCE 591. So I'll show it to you now. So here's the electric gun we use. It's for a 2-component tube with a static mixing tip, but this makes life real easy for joints like this. So you always have to purge the air out of these. So you just purge a little bit in the bag. Now that's mixed. Of course, my bag isn't leaking naturally. All right, and we start at the end. And we fill and overfill the joints. This is kind of funny because I have the gun in one hand and the camera in the other, as I'm shimmying backwards doing this. So the idea of this is you overfill it, and then we take a scraper and we shave the excess material so it's smooth. And we do that before we polish. So we grind over it, and then it's a nice smooth transition in the floor. Try to get down there. Okay, I have to change this tube. Okay, so here we go with the second half of this. Again, I keep the bag out here. I go to purge the air out of this. Once that's purged out, I'm going to start at the wall and come back. It's easier to drag this backwards and push forward. Okay, we're full, we're over full all the way across. All right, so I just want to show you this joint. So this is what it looks like after you overfill it. So again, we're just gonna let this sit about 10 minutes or so. This stuff sets really quick. Then we're gonna scrape that off, and then we're gonna hook up our grinder. We're gonna start grinding. Jeff changed out these diamonds. So these are the 40 grit. It's a super soft compound designed for really hard concrete. And I can just tell by looking at this concrete, this is gonna be really hard. So we should be able to do this pretty quickly. Our generator there, our power cord, our vacuum system there. This is a 3-inch flex hose that we have and our cord connected to it. And by the way, our vacuum system, this is a 480 volt 3-phase vacuum system. It's like 850 CFM. This thing works awesome for what we do. But anyway, we're gonna run this hose inside here. We're just gonna leave the vacuum system outside because this is such a small job. Somebody had mentioned to me before, like, think big if you have such big equipment. Well, we do. We do a lot of commercial industrial work. We did a 30,000 square foot floor just the other week. All right, so here we go. This stuff is finally set up. I'm just going to show you guys how we shave this, just so you see what we do. So we just take the razor and you simply slide down here, shave this joint. Sorry about the white out here. The sun is messing with me a little bit. Now this is still a little on the soft side, so we kind of have to be a little delicate. That's why Jeff was going at like a diagonal angle across there. It helps shave it a little easier. So again, if you were doing thousands of feet of floor, we would probably wait another 20 minutes before we do this. But now you can see this is the joint that we're left with. Hopefully that shows up okay in the sunlight. I'll try it a little bit over here. Just going to shave that joint all the way down. And then we're going to get set up and we're going to continue grinding. Of course, I overfilled it. That's where I tried to hold the camera and fill the joint at the same time, which doesn't seem to work so well. So that's it. Shaved joint. All right, so Jeff's finishing up, hooking up the grinder. I'm going to go out and turn on the generator. Well, actually, I'm going to start it. I don't turn it on. There's our vacuum system. All right, there's like a 10-second delay with that. So what we're going to do is, looks like Jeff set up, he's going to start in the corner here. We always do the outside edges first. We're going to do the perimeter once, and then once we do the perimeter, we'll go back and forth and do the middle of the floor. I have to do the edges after this pass. I'm going to let the big grinder take the bulk of the grinding. So stand by here for the big grinder. All right, so we're getting ready to start up here. You always got to watch real closely when you first start. If you're cutting too deep, you'll have too much stone exposure. All right, so as we started grinding, we just about made it around the perimeter and it started slowing down. The diamonds started heating up. So it's important I start pouring some water out in front of the diamonds to cool them down, which I discuss a little bit later. But once the diamonds reach like 200 degrees, they glaze over and don't cut. So that water just helps cool them as we go. So we realized we had to cut the other way again to get nice consistent exposure of stone. All right, so we actually did 2 grinds already on this. So we got some exposed aggregate, which we weren't originally going for, but it just kind of happened, and the owner apparently loves this, which is great. So we decided to grind twice. We're going to grind one more time with the 40 grit diamond. But that being said, this area is about 350 square feet or so. That's how much dust we got just from that. So we have about 200 pounds of dust. Okay, so finally we got done with the first grind, which actually turned out to be 3 grinds over this whole floor to get this stone exposed. So there's still dust on here, it's kind of hard to see. Now we switched out the diamonds. These are 80 grit metal bond diamonds. So we just started with the 40. So we're gonna run the 80s on here. I have to do the edges quick first. we'll do the edges and we're gonna run the 80s, and this should go much quicker now that we got past that first grind, which is painfully slow.
That actually is metal burn on the surface just from the heat of the diamonds.
It's just possible that's going to come out on the next
Okay, as we continue around with the 80 bond diamond, it's very important that you get all the scratches out from the 40s. So we take our time, do this one real slow to get all the scratches out. Otherwise, they're going to come back to haunt you, and you're not going to find out until you're almost done with the floor.
Alright, while Jeff is finishing up those 80s, moving along, you'll be done in a minute there. These are the 150s. These are mounted on a plate. And these plates are actually aluminum. And they're lightweight. It keeps the temperature down. These diamonds, by the way, when you're cutting, if they go over about 220 degrees, they get so hot that they glaze over. And once they glaze over, they don't cut at all. So it's very important that you keep diamonds cool. So what I was doing earlier in the video is I was pouring water in front of the grinder to keep the diamonds cool. It's kind of a little trick, but that works. As soon as the tip is done, we're going to swap these out. We'll keep going. Okay, Jeff is now on the 150 grit grind. I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So this is 150 grit. It's hard to see with a camera, obviously. Just working on the 150. I'll get some support out of his way here. So they don't fall. Switching over to the resin bonds on the next grind. These are what they call resin bond diamonds. These are actually held by Velcro on this plate. So this is going to be a 100 grit. So right now we're running the 150 metals. We're going to back up to the 100 resin. Then we're going to run a 200 grit resin, and we're going to run a 400 grit resin, and then we're going to switch to an 800 grit Phoenix pad.
All right, so now I'm following behind Jeff, spraying the densifier on the concrete to harden the surface before we run the 100 resins. Now I'm going to run a 400 grit copper bond diamond around the perimeter to just remove scratches from that edge, even though I did it once, but I'll go around one time quick to get any scratches out. And then we're going to continue with the 100 grit resins on the large grinder.
Okay, so I just got done running the edges with the hand grinder. So obviously they look a little bit different now. These are the 100 grit resin bond pucks. Just getting ready to run this, and we're moving right along.
So on this floor, the edges dropped off, which is very common when finishers finish concrete. So we're trying to pay particular attention to the edges because there were some scratches that remained. So Jeff is running that edge really tight with the grinder. Edges are always the toughest part of any of these floors. Okay, now we're switching out. We're putting the 200 resins on here. We're going to do the same thing again, and then we're going to run the grinder the opposite direction, which you always run perpendicular every path so you don't get tracks in the floor, or that's what you try to eliminate. Consistency is king here, so you're always trying to be as consistent as possible on every pass over the floor so you don't leave marks. Now we're going to switch out. We're going to put the 400s on and do it again. Okay, so now we are running the 800 grit diamond impregnated pad underneath the grinder. You can start to see the shine now for sure, but what you start to see now is the character coming out in the floor. And I know I mentioned this multiple times in the video, but this is all stuff that comes out of the concrete. We can't control any of it, but you see the stone exposure. You start to see, it's called craze cracks, those little cracks on the surface. It's all starting to come out now. All right, so at this point you see me crawl around the perimeter checking the edges, and I notice we have resin burn around the perimeter. So we put on another set of 800 grit impregnated pads to try to get that resin burn out. I quickly do the edge with another 400 grit pass just to get that resin burn up, and then we're gonna rerun the grinder around the perimeter to get rid of any of the marks.
Okay, so now we ran the 800 grit pads. You definitely see that reflection now. We have to put the guard down and then burnish this. Now there's a lot of travel marks in the concrete here. Apparently these edges drop down pretty hard, which is common when finishers go around the edges. And they're all polished, they're all smooth, but they look different. This is part of the polished concrete thing that you have to accept. This is an organic floor that you can't really control. The other thing too is these are what they call craze cracks in the surface. These really weren't even noticeable before we started, but when we start grinding and they come out, they kind of become exposed. So our client here actually loves this look, so he is super happy with this, but this is all opinion driven. I mean, some people like these type of floors, some people don't. So I try to go to great lengths to explain what a floor may or may not look like. All I can really guarantee is that it's going to be glossy when we're done, and that's about it. So we're going to put this guard down. I'll take another walk through when we're done, and that's it for today. All right, so we mopped the guard on here, which actually makes it look a little hazy. Now we're going to run our burnisher over the floor, propane burnisher. So we're going to burnish this. I have to figure out where I can put this camera so I don't run over it. Okay, so I just got done. Check out the reflection on this floor. I mean, that is like a mirror. It truly is. So like I always mention with polished concrete, you really can't control what's in the concrete. So if you look down, you see those craze cracks in there. That's all in the concrete. There's nothing you can do about that. But what great reflectivity in this floor. Everything that's in the floor was in the floor and out of anybody's control. And I always say we can make it shiny. But that is a very shiny floor. So as always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. Tune in for the next one. That should be in a couple days. I'll post another video. Thank you.